Hello everybody and welcome back to the final video of the Power Tool Workbench series. In this video, the work is obviously done. I'm just going to talk you through the different features of this bench, things to watch out for if you're building this yourself, and things that I have planned with the bench in the future. Let's get going. Okay, so this bench is primarily made for, let's say, the track saw. It's got these 20mm holes over the top, drilled at 96mm apart. And what's important about these is they are perfectly square. Perfectly square to one another, that is, not the holes are square. And the basic idea of this is you put two dogs here and here. I've lost the other one temporarily, so I need to buy another one. Two dogs there and there, one dog there, and let's say in line with that one, up there. And then with the track, you put that up against the two dogs that are at 90 degrees to these ones, and you can cut a perfect 90-degree corner without the use of a table saw or anything like that. Now these holes were drilled using the path guide system. I've already done a video on that, so link is in the top corner and the description for that if you want to watch it. It's all detailed in that video, well worth a watch if you want an idea as to how this thing works. Now the top of this workbench is made from Velcromat, which is a type of high density fiberboard and is more resistant to moisture, warping, and is just more hard wearing than your standard MDF, and it comes in a variety of colours, so I chose grey because I'm adventurous like that. There is also a solid wood lipping around the edge of the workbench which has a very heavy round over on it, because we all know what it's like when you're using a track saw, router, whatever. It's horrible when the cable is dragging over a corner of your workbench or your workmate, whatever you're working on. But even worse, when your extractor hose is dragging over it as well. Now you can see down here that we've got two cabinets, which we'll go over in a minute, but there is space between them to fit your extractor. And this will fit the Bosch extractors, the Faithfull, the Makita, whatever you want to cram under there. It will fit, and it is open on both ends. So if you want to use this on the other side of the bench, you just push it back, it will spin around in there, and then you can use it the other side. And the top of the workbench is a torsion box, which you would have seen me build in the series. And it has these sausage-shaped holes in there, and they also work quite well as little storage compartments. These ones in particular are very good for just cramming that hose in, and then it holds it. You get a little bit sticking out, but it's far easier than wrapping it round the extractor each time, having to pull it out, get these elastic band things in place. I just cram it in there now, and it works amazing. And you can also leave most of it sort of just in that compartment anyway, so you only bring out as much hose as you actually need, which is pretty handy. But you can see with that heavy round over on there, there is no way that hose is going to catch on there, which is lovely. Now, one of the things that is quite unfortunate about this Bosch track saw is that I didn't realize this in the previous video that I did on this path guide system, but the track saw actually overhangs the rail on the bottom here. So when you drag it back, it can actually hit the dogs. This rail needed to be probably about 6mm wider, and it would have been able to clear it. So I do have a couple of ideas on how I'm going to fix this. One of them involves making a sub base for this rail that essentially has holes on the side of it that match the same spacing as the pattern on the top here. So then with that stuck to the bottom of the rail, you just slot it on top of the dogs and it locks it in place square and everything like that. I've got a few spare rails, so I'm going to try that as an experiment, and then if it works, you guys can follow it as well. But the other thing you can do with this saw is actually interchange it with the Faithfull rail. All you do is you take out that black strip there, and this will work on the Faithfull rail, which is what this path guide system is made to work with. And if you want to see that in action, have a look at Peter Parfitt's channel, because he is the inventor of the path system. Now, I've had this top assembled for about 3 weeks now, and I've probably dropped about close to 10 things down the holes in the top of this. The convenient thing about that is you have access to the whole underside of this workbench, so if something was to fall down there, you can easily get it, and it also works as extra storage as well. And the way this top is attached to the ribs is through a massive sliding dovetail that goes 8 foot along the entire underside of this top, and then the supporting ribs are also held in place with a sliding dovetail as well. This is quite a complex and risky thing to do. I took the risk because I wanted to try and show off a bit, and thank God it worked. But in the plans that are available on my website, it also shows a different method of attaching the top for those of you that don't want to be as much of an idiot as I was. So moving on to the underside, this workbench is made up of 3 main parts. You got the top, the large cabinet and the small cabinet. And we'll begin with the large cabinet. In here, you've got a compartment that can store 4 to 6 power tool cases. So you could store the 4 that I've got here, or you could get 6 of this size. The only thing I would be tempted to do if I was to build this bench again, or I might even retrofit in the future, is put another shelf in here so that if I want to get access to the router or the track saw, I don't have to take this one off first. It's not much of a hassle, but it's a simple thing to fix. And on the end here, you have got an open area with adjustable shelving on it, which I'm finding incredibly useful for storing things for my router table, which is right there, and just extra bits for the path guide system on top. You know, just anything that you need to get quick access to. Also, all the bits that are normally stashed at the bottom of the power tool cases, you know, like wrenches and collets, they just get lost at the bottom of those power tool cases. Having them out like this, quick and easy tool change, very nice and simple. And then this section here is the timber store. So the timber store is made up of 6 pigeonholes, and each of them only accepts a certain length of timber. So here we've got 300 millimeters. Anything over that length will not go any further. 500 mil, so long bits like that, they'll go in. You know, occasionally you get shorter bits, but at least they're not pushed all the way to the back. 700, 900, and technically it's 1092 millimeters because that's the depth of the cabinet, but we'll call it 1.1 meters. So that is where you can store your big sections. And by having this, all of a sudden, your offcuts area becomes incredibly clean because all those little bits that were just normally thrown around the floor, it's got a nice little home. And if you're looking for a bit of ash that's like, I don't know, 700 millimeters long, oh, there's a bit, pull that out and I know it's going to be 700 without having to root through all of this stuff. The top left is going to be turned into a drawer to store the even smaller offcuts that I have. You know, bits like this and bits like, hang on, I'll go get it. Where is it? There you go. Pink ivory, bits of more pink ivory, snake wood, stuff like that that you just can't, it's blasphemy to throw it away. You can't do that. So in here is going to be a drawer that is going to be about 600 millimeters long, and little bits like that can easily just live in there. In the plans, there's a design for a drawer already included, and I've also changed the construction of the timber store because if you watch the series, you'll know how much of a nightmare I had trying to get the backstops in place. I had a lot of comments from viewers suggesting, Matt, why don't you just make 6 boxes at different depths and then just shove them in there? That is absolute genius. I have no idea how I didn't. It's crazy. When you're filming like this, you just get carried away with the ideas in your head and you think, right, I'm doing that. I'm not going to think about any other solution. But if I just sat back 1 minute and thought, how can I make this easier? 6 boxes, simple. So those will be detailed on the plans. Thank you to pretty much all of you viewers who suggested that. I felt like an absolute idiot. But for the time being, this is just working as a store for my bowl blanks and things like that. But yeah, this is a incredibly useful feature, not only for the bench, but just for the shop in general. Now moving around to the back of the workbench, it's got this big open area here that is kind of a little bit wasted. There was a few suggestions that I could make this section open, so then you could store things on top of the boxes that are within the timber store. Very good solution. I think it would look a bit untidy for my liking, and also the original idea I had for this is to make it into a shadow board because I've got things like router fences and the Starship Enterprise. It's a guide rail adapter, but those things can hang on here and you get easy access to them because that is made to use on a guide rail, and the guide rails are always going to be used on this bench. So it makes sense to have things like that hanging there. Here, I might even have the guide rail joining bars perhaps. You know, just stuff that doesn't need to be crammed away in a drawer and can easily be hung up. This is a perfect area to do that. So that details the larger cabinet. Now let's get on to the smaller one. So down here, we have got 3 drawers. The top 2 are the same size and then the bottom one is slightly deeper. The bottom one I'm finding useful for storing things like router plunge bases and stuff like that. I'm toying with the idea of making dividers to fit into it to really organize it, but I'm not quite there just yet. The second one fits things like my sander and all my boxes of abrasives. Now I don't have to dig around in the cabinet in the corner of the workshop. If I'm doing any sanding on the top of here, it's all easily accessible from the drawer. And then the top one I have kitted out with foam. Oh, that's where that went. These are all offcuts, hence why it looks a little bit uneven. but I haven't quite worked out what I'm going to store in here yet, but I think having that section nice and organized and at the top of the drawers will be incredibly useful. You might also notice how the drawers are dovetailed together. These drawers are constructed traditionally but fitted with modern runners, so you get an incredibly strong and long-lasting drawer that is still really easy to actually use, and it can support a lot of weight as well. I chose to install 550mm runners in this so that, one, it didn't hit my planer, which is right here, and also it allows you to see the dovetails. You can fit 600mm runners in here if you want, but you sacrifice the dovetails, and you still get enough extension out the 550s anyway, so you might as well do that in my opinion, but it's up to you. And then finally, we've got these lovely handles here that match the curves on the top of the workbench. Moving round, you can see that we've really maximized the amount of space in this workbench. We've got more adjustable shelving here. This section is mainly storing stuff like my drill bits and my screwdriver bits, so that I've got easy access for them on top of this workbench, and also my Roubo, which is just over there. The thing about these shelves is you could also make them into like router bit storage, drill bit storage. All you've got to do is make a bit of wood, drill the holes in it, and then everything can stand upright in there, and it's easily interchangeable. No longer do you have to deal with cases like this, or even worse, your Forstner bits just crammed in a box like that. You really shouldn't do that. They'll all be laid out nice and organised, and you can easily find the size you want. This section here is simply an open corner. You've got access to it from this side and the other side as well. And to be honest, I like to give myself a bit of flexibility with everything I build for the workshop, because I know I have a habit of just dumping things. Like for example, all my screw storage, I've got my 4x20s, my 5x25, like they're all nicely organised. But then I've also got a box of unsorted ones, where if I find a screw just laying around on the floor and I can't be bothered to measure it, I just chuck it in the unsorted screw box. It's nice to have dumping grounds like that, because realistically, the vast majority of us are not organised or tidy, especially in our workshops. So having a bit of flexibility, an open dumping ground like this just allows you to put stuff in there without really thinking. Now I've tried to keep it somewhat tidy. I've got the domino under here, so I've got easy access to it on my Roubo workbench and also the power tool workbench. That's another router up there. Circular saw blade, and then I've also managed to store another power tool case just behind these ones as well. I mean, realistically, you can do what you want with this area. I chose to leave it open, but if you wanted to make this an area for, I don't know, a compressor or something like that, you can do so. And on the back here is where I made the mistake while drilling the shelf pins. This leg was originally meant to be on the other side of the workbench, but those of you who watched, I can't remember what episode it was, I managed to drill through the entire leg instead of drilling 15mm deep. Absolute plonker. But I've chosen not to fill them in, because every time I'm walking to my pillar drill, I get the instant reminder to set the depth stop, you absolute. Now in regards to the material you can use for building this workbench, it's as expensive or as cheap as you want to make it. In the plans, there's little pointers throughout saying what you can use, but for me, I chose OSB because I like it. I use it around most of my workshops, so it fits quite well. And then all the solid wood around it is Southern Yellow Pine. Again, an incredibly easy to find and cheap wood, but the solid wood acts as really good protection for the OSB. I get a lot of flack for using OSB in my workshop furniture or pieces, whatever, but realistically it's pretty strong and it adds some sort of visual interest to the pieces that I make, rather than it just be a flat bit of MDF or plywood. OSB I think looks pretty good. The only thing you've got to watch out for it is the corners. If you were to hit them with something, then it splinters pretty easily. However, with this workbench, there is no exposed corners on the OSB. It is all lipped with solid wood. The legs protect the edges, the stretchers protect the edges. Even the front of the timber store has solid wood lipping on it. So if you were to put something in and you accidentally bang, then it's not gonna chip out the OSB. That lipping takes all the impact. The same goes for the stretchers at the bottom of the power tool cases. If you were to put that in and accidentally hit it, that stretcher has taken all the impact rather than chipping up the OSB. So the choice of materials is entirely up to you. If you want to go cheap like I've done, then do that. If you want to make it out of birch ply and bubinga, then you can do that if you really want to. Send me photos if you do that, because I'd love to see it. But yeah, that is the workbench. So if you want to buy the plans, please be aware that they are not step-by-step instructions. However, there is a lot of pointers throughout all the plans that give you general guidance on building the top, building the large cabinet, building the small cabinet, the drawers, etc., what to look out for while you're building it, as well as listing all the dimensions. You'll also be supplied with a cutting list, but a word of warning of that: don't cut everything out before you start joining it together, because if you watch the series, you'll know I had a lot of problems with that. Cut things out in batches, and don't forget to double check the measurements on the actual piece rather than following the cutting list to a T. The plans also include a SketchUp model of the workbench, which you can disassemble, have a look at all the joints and stuff within it, as well as an exploded view. So if you're struggling to find a certain dimension in the working drawings, or you're struggling to decipher what's actually going on in those drawings, you can just reference back to the SketchUp model and it will be really easy to figure out from there. When you open the download file, you'll see that there is loads of different SketchUp files in there. This is so that you can open it in anything from SketchUp 2013 all the way up to SketchUp 2019, as well as SketchUp 5 to SketchUp 8. So simply download the file that matches the version of SketchUp on your computer. I would recommend making a duplicate of the file just in case you mess around with the first one too much. At least you've got a copy that you can go back to in case this one's all completely screwed up. For those of you across the pond who are interested in downloading these plans, please be aware they are in metric because imperial doesn't make sense. Start a few wars with that one. So yeah, the plans are in metric. They're not available in imperial, unfortunately. Another pointer: when you download it, please be aware that the download link will be sent to the email address that your PayPal account is linked to. So if you made your PayPal account ages ago and it's a different email on there to the one you currently use, the download link will not be sent to the email address that you're using at the moment. It will be sent to the one that your PayPal is registered to. That is the #1 reason for people losing plans of the Roubo workbench back there. It's because it's been sent to their old email address. However, if you're downloading the plans on a computer, they should start downloading automatically as well as being sent to the PayPal email address. Those of you that do it on a phone, tablet, I don't think the download will appear when you purchase it, but it will still be sent to that email address. So double check that. And off the top of my head, I think that is everything you should be aware of. On the download page, there'll be other frequently asked questions and other things you should be aware of. Please make sure to read that in full before downloading the plans, because unfortunately they are not refundable due to the fact that they are a download file. I can't exactly ask for them back. So I hope you understand that. Before I go, I would just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported through this series, right away from episode 1 all the way to what we've come to now. Your feedback, suggestions, criticism have helped this thing become what it is. And now not only do I have one awesome workbench in the workshop, I've got 2. And I am incredibly thankful for all of that. Thank you for your support. I really, really appreciate it. But saying that, I cannot wait to get started on something else other than this blimmin' workbench, because I've been making it for 4 months now and I'm finally done. I'm signing off. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.